Todd Hartle, you're on This Week in Startups. Are you there, Todd?
Yeah. Hi, Jason. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for calling in. You, I guess, emailed me directly for some advice, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
So my question revolves around finding and bringing on a co-founder for my startup. I've been bootstrapping my company for the last 9 months. It's currently just me and a few freelance offshore developers.
Got it.
I'm looking to bring on a technical co-founder and wanted your advice on the best way to do that. For example, sources to recruit from, evaluation of potential candidates, and most importantly, compensation schemes, salary, equity percentage, vesting periods, what have you.
This is a very important question. How long has the company been in existence?
9 months.
And has it launched yet?
No.
Okay, so it's pre-launch. You've been working on it. It's not launched yet. You've been paying money out of your own pocket to fund it with developers from another country, correct?
Exactly.
And you're starting to realize, gee, this is going to get very expensive. I don't know the technology side so well. I need somebody to help with the technology.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're considering having a co-founder. Picking a co-founder, and there's, by the way, fondue in the Deadpool. That's just hysterical. Go get Wikia. Good dog. Anyway, sorry, I don't know if you were watching the live stream, but the dogs just went in the pool. So this is a very important issue. My first company, I had no co-founder. My second company, I had Brian Alvey, who was on the first episode of the show. And on this company, no co-founder, but I did hire a friend to help with it. Mark Jeffrey, not quite a co-founder, but first employee. And apologies, your name is Joe Waltman. I had you mixed up with our homework caller who was on later, who did his homework. Did you do your homework? So it's complicated. Picking a partner for a business is like picking a wife or a husband, a spouse. It can be just like getting married. It can be challenging at times. Are you a married man, Joe?
No, I'm not.
You ever have a long-term relationship with another person? Live with them? That kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just like that, a partner. You're going to spend as much time with your partner as you did with that significant other, and you're going to be working with them all day long. So it's not like it's all roses and, you just go into the movies and going and have dinner and going to the park or riding your bicycles. You're actually trying to build something, and there's going to be disagreements and fighting. So you have to pick them really well. Now, since you were first in, you get a little bit more of the leverage. So you can go to that person and say, listen, I have no money to pay you, therefore you're working for sweat equity, and that would require a certain type of person who's got a financial situation where they can do that. You may find somebody who needs to get paid max money, in which case, if you don't have max money to pay them, you can't do that. And if you did have max money, you wouldn't be asking to have them as a co-founder, you would just hire them, I would guess, correct?
Exactly.
So you want somebody to work for equity for no money or some money. Am I guessing correctly?
Well, there's really two scenarios. There's one where no money. Obviously, that would imply more equity. And there's another scenario where I can afford to pay sort of an expense salary, where a few $1,000s a month kind of thing.
Okay. So this is going to depend. You're going to have to be opportunistic and open-minded. Different people are going to be at different points in their career. You may find somebody who's done 3 startups in which they say, "Why would I need you?" They're going to want an equal amount of equity as you have. You might find somebody who's been second fiddle to the CTO at a startup once, or is at a big company and hates it and has saved a little bit of money and wants to take a chance. So you're going to have to be fluid in what you offer them. It's not going to be one size fits all. What you're going to want to do, though, is, and you're going to want to have a decent startup attorney. Do you have a decent attorney who does your stuff yet?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you talk to them. What you can do with your co-founder is say, because they're not really a co-founder because they're coming in 9 months later. So this person who you're going to bring on as a partner, but maybe not a co-founder, you can say, I want you to work for 2 years to get your equity. 4 years would be more common. You could start with 4. They get a 1-year cliff, which means they get no equity until they hit a year. So they may or may not go for that. You could go for quarterly. You could go for every 6 months. All different possibilities. But you don't want to obviously give them a bucket load of equity to start, because then if they leave, then the whole cap table, the capital structure of the company is screwed up. So you definitely want them to vest, and you're going to have to play it by ear as to what their value is on a percentage of the company. Right now you own 100% of the company. I think to get a CTO type person, if it was a funded company with a large valuation, they might get 1, 2, 3% of the company. If it was a startup and you were hiring them and paying them a salary, and it was a small company and they were pre-launch, maybe they would get 5 or 10%. it can range. So it really depends on the person and the opportunity and what you're willing to give up. I would say if you have somebody who's willing to work for free or for little, 1 to 10% of the company would be a range I would be comfortable with for them coming in. But it also depends on who it is. I mean, if it's Mark and Dreesen, you might want to give them more equity than you have. So there's a whole range of options. Jason, any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So is your bigger challenge finding the person or figuring out how to structure the deal?
Good question. Probably both, to be honest with you. I've found a few interesting people, but I'm not sure I'm in love with any of them yet.
Okay.
So I could certainly use some advice on the recruitment side.
So I actually had the exact same situation as you. There's a co-founder in DocStock. He's our CTO, Alon Schwartz. He's incredible. And it's exactly like a marriage, and not being married, it was a pretty crazy experience to go through. So I had started the business while I was in law school and just kind of got it off the ground. One is you can meet someone really in any environment. So the way I met Alon is I had posted a question on LinkedIn, question and answers, saying I'm looking for a startup, CTO, a co-founder, and I got 30 people that responded. And if you are familiar with the Israeli culture and classic Israeli fashion, Alon wrote back, "Your search is done," and that was it. He didn't write anything else. So it intrigued me. But what we did is we worked together for 4 months, actually with no formal agreement. We just had a gentleman's handshake. We said, we're going to work on this together, and we're going to see how it goes. And I think that's very important, is if you don't know the person or have worked with them already, I would take steps to work with them and try to simulate what that environment's going to be like. And the fact is...
Were they actually creating, sorry for the interruption, were they actually creating deliverables for you, or just whiteboarding and chit-chatting?
Deliverables. I mean, we were on the phone together. He was managing a team in India that I found that I was originally paying for, and we were doing the work. I mean, we were...
So that basically means he was taking the risk because you own the company.
Absolutely.
He had no agreement, so therefore he has no claim to it, and you were paying him, so he had signed some kind of employment agreement?
I wasn't even paying him. We just agreed that we were going to work on this project, right. DocStock together for a couple months and see how it went.
Yeah.
And
this is, by the way, since you have a company already formed, a dangerous thing to do. It may have worked out for Jason, but then you get into intellectual property agreements. If you get in a fight, I would advise more clarity. It worked out for you, but when you got to the equity discussion, how did that occur? Is he equal partners with you, or did you say, I'm going to carve out this much equity for you? How did that work?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're co-founders, absolutely. Right. I mean, I had started the process a little bit along, and I had the idea and got it going, but he was there from the absolute beginning of the step. So we just sat down and thought what we thought would be an equal percentage split based upon what I brought to the table and what he brought to the table. Yeah. And we had already worked together for 4 months. So I do agree that the litigious side should be taken care of. If you have a company set up, I would have an agreement signed. I would have you want to have all kinds of out clauses, like if then. So if this person works for 4 months with you and then decides to leave, or you don't want them, how does the situation handled? But overall, I think that if you haven't worked with somebody, to give yourselves the time to work together to see if it's a good fit before you formalize the agreement is a valuable thing.
I think that's a great suggestion. And what I would say is I do sometimes letter agreements with people if I don't want to go through a lawyer, which is I'm going to hire you for a project to work for 3 months at this rate. If at that time we want to work together, whatever, and then both people sign the letter. It's just 3 bullet points. So that could be a good way for you to sort of maybe not incur all the legal expense of doing a deal before you know, and this is a great suggestion by Jason, maybe work together for a couple of months. And I did that actually with Alex, who's producing the show and also working for Calicanis Conferences. I told Tyler when he hired him, and I think I did the same thing with Tyler when I hired Tyler, which is work for a couple of months to see if we like it, and then we can move to a more formal employment structure. So pay him as a consultant for 3 months, they get to try it, you get to try it, and then you can actually do the employee agreement. So I even do that for employees, let alone co-founders, because it's better for both parties. So that's a great suggestion on Jason's part. In terms of finding them, I love the suggestion of LinkedIn, going to events, and maybe picking startups in the kill zone. So if your startup is in content, look at the 20 top content companies, go on LinkedIn, go on Facebook, find the people who are at that company.
Mahalo question and answers.
Mahalo answers, any of those places, and then just ask them to go get a cup of coffee. And that's been my technique is, in terms of approaching people, working on a new project, would love to get a cup of coffee with you and tell you about it. If you do that, you'd be really surprised at how many people will just go meet with you. Just a one-sentence email. Just would love to take you out for a cup of coffee and show you what I'm working on. But definitely poaching from an existing startup, especially startups that have been acquired. That's one of my big secrets. I'll go to a startup like, I don't know, Shopzilla or Internet brands here in Los Angeles. These kind of companies, they've been around for a while. They've got hundreds, dozens of employees. They get bought or sold, business.com, whatever it is. Post-acquisition, there's people hanging around who are just like, why am I here? And that's a great place to get people from. So look at the TechCrunch acquisition, group, companies, and then maybe poach from there.
Good stuff. Thanks. So just in conclusion, so you think 10% is about the max that you'd give up?
It depends on where you're at as an entrepreneur. When I did the deal with Brian Alvey for Weblog Zing, I brought him on as a full partner. He took a mortgage on his house, and he worked for free for the entirety of the company, as did I, and I actually put some cash up. In that situation, I didn't, I was Jason Calacanis, like 2.0. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any investors, and I had very little clout. When I did Mahalo, I don't really need a co-founder. I can raise the money myself, and I can hire people and give them a nice chunk of equity. So depending on where you're at in your career, this is your first startup?
Yeah, pretty much.
If it's your first startup, you're in the sort of Jason bucket, I guess, and how I was in my last company. Yeah, you could go 50-50. You could go 20%. All kinds of different arrangements would work. You could even say, I'm willing to do 20% now. If it goes really well, I would increase it potentially, and we could talk to the board about that. So really depends on where you are in your career and how far along the startup is. It seems like you're not a pure startup because you've already started working for 9 months and you've probably invested some of your own money, maybe $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, I'm guessing.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you got a little bit more at stake. You could also say, you know what, for the $30,000 or $40,000 I've put in, I want to own 20% of the company in preferred shares, and then sorry, the dogs are barking here. This maybe isn't such a good idea. But you should definitely at least get a video of it. So there's all kinds of different options with it. It's going to depend on the person. Work with them for a couple of months, and then make a deal with them is, I think, the best advice you're going to get out of the two of us for this one. I think Jason nailed it. Work with them for a couple of months, and then go from there.
That's great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Awesome. It was great talking to you, and thanks for the question, and keep listening or watching or whatever people do with the show. We'll talk to you soon.
Will do.
Cheers.
You've been watching This Week in Startups. To watch the full episode, click here. To check out some other shows from This Week In, click here.